the Alaskan frontier, Ohio as a penance, and bringing things into focus with Justin Leiner on Spirit Inspire, starting right now.
Broadcasting from the Cathedral of the Assumption in Louisville, Kentucky, this is Spirit Inspire. And now, here is your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Spirit Inspire. I'm your host today, John Soul. Joined with me are my co-hosts, Eric Huff.
Hey, everybody.
And Vincent Ricketts.
Hello.
And today we have a special guest with us, a friend of mine and co-worker with Family Renewal Project, Justin Leiner. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a great episode today to just share the heart of Justin Leiner and what he's gone through in ministry as a former Focus missionary and working in campus ministry on a college campus. And he also, of course, has a fun fact that I'll let him share as we delve into who he is and where he comes from.
No spoilers, John.
No spoilers, right? None. But we'll also kind of share a little bit of what Justin and Vincent also do at times for Family Renewal Project with me. And so with that, Justin, again, thank you for being here. And maybe we can start with a question. Where are you from and how did you grow up? What was like some of those initial faith experiences in your family like?
Very good question. So, in answer to that fun fact I get to share with everyone, I am originally from Alaska. It's pretty awesome.
Is that the trivia fact?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the fun fact.
Okay.
There it
I
is.
just wanted to make sure.
I hope it's fun, everyone.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I think
For a lot of people, I'm the first person they meet from Alaska, so that's pretty fun. Yeah. So, grew up in Alaska. I was born in '95 up there. My parents both moved to Alaska separately just for the adventure of it. Like, my mom tells me the story. I still think this is crazy. That she listened to this song called North to Alaska and loved it and was like, I'm going to move to Alaska when she was like 21 or something. And so she did. So, yeah, my mom and dad met at my home parish up there, St. Michael's Catholic Church in Palmer, Alaska.
you owe your whole existence to that song.
Yeah, North to Alaska.
That's awesome.
Thank goodness. Yep, so Palmer, Alaska is a pretty great place. It's small. I mean, it's a small town, probably 7,000 people, something like that. And I grew up, my dad had a small vegetable farm, and my mom did some work with the university. It's like an offshoot of a university scientific lab place. She got her degree in plant pathology, so she really likes plants and studying that stuff. So, but I love growing up in Alaska. Like you leave Alaska and you realize oh, nowhere else is as cool as it is up here. But
Well.
All right, Alaska.
Sheesh. Not even Texas?
Not
Oh, boy.
even Texas. I lived in Texas for a year, so I can say that. But so, oh gosh, you're literally surrounded by mountains. I just grew up. I ran around in the forest in my backyard. It was a really fun time. So yeah, just it's. I can reflect on it, and even though I couldn't say this when I was younger, but the experience of just being in nature and just learning to be free in God's creation. I think my parents gave me a really great gift in that, and just allowed me to kind of learn what it means to just be free in the beauty of God's creation and just learn to just have fun in a very natural way in that. Kind of like how Adam was in the wilderness. I grew up in the wilderness a little bit. At least a little bit. I mean, what's cool about Alaska is that there are places you can go and you can just look this way. And there's literally nothing that way for hundreds of miles in terms of people and civilization. There's actually just wilderness out that way. So you get step into that just a little bit at least.
I think about that a lot when I go places here. You feel like you're in the middle of nature, but I know it really resonates with me because I think, well, I know I'll eventually hit 75 in a few miles if I keep going that way. It can't all be nature, and there's probably 12 houses in between, and yeah, that's awesome. So you were talking a lot about the nature and the plants and gardening and things. I think my visual picture of Alaska is like just so frigid. So is that also true at the same time?
Yeah, well, we do get cold. It's
Okay.
true. I can't deny that. But what I love about Alaska is that when it's cold in Alaska and you get snow, it's also really fun. There's a lot of stuff to do. Like when I was in high school, I did a lot of cross country skiing. That was really fun. So in Alaska, you can just like, there's a lot of places you can go and you got a lot of terrain for it too. You're going up and down hills, you're going all around. And I had a great time with that. So the winter, even though it's cold, it doesn't feel like you're cold and now you just want to stay at home and you can't really do anything. Like, no, you get out there, you do things. I have a lot, like I really do mean like a lot of fun moose stories. So if you associate moose with Alaska, you would be right to do so. There's a lot of moose up there. And I've skied past a moose where like, you know, pretend like John was a giant, like 9-foot tall moose or something.
Not far off.
Okay.
There's been a couple of times where I was like skiing and there was a moose on the side of the trail. So like basically like where I am, I do remember one time where I am like right now, if John was a moose and he was on the side of the trail, I was like here skiing and I'm just like, hey moose, and I just like skied past the moose like, okay, it's fine. A couple of other of my teammates did the same thing. That was fun too. And there was one other time where I was about to go down a hill, you know, and not a huge hill, maybe like a 20-foot path, but I like stop at the top and I like look up and look down and there's just a moose just sitting on the bottom of the hill and I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And I'm really glad I like checked and didn't just, you know, go on autopilot down the hill because I would have like crashed in front of this moose and that wouldn't have been good.
Are they dangerous too? Like very dangerous?
They can be very dangerous if you rile them up. But like usually, so in Anchorage,
Kinda like
Alaska,
John.
which is where I saw, kind of like John, exactly, where I saw most of the moose.
Oh no.
As long as you're just like, the moose are used to people, so as long as you're not like throwing snowballs at them, trying to rile them up, which a couple of people did one time and they did get hurt, but it was their fault. It wasn't the moose's fault. Okay, it's like,
Is it ever the moose's fault?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the real question.
Of course you would ask.
Is it ever my fault? I mean, apparently it's all.
John-
This
John-
moose story is becoming an analogy for my life.
John, are we
somehow.
still talking about the moose?
I just want to know what
Right.
happens when you give one a muffin.
They become
eat it.
very happy.
Have you fed a moose?
Funny enough, I didn't feed the moose, but this is still a true story. A mama moose one time gave birth to twin calves in my backyard, and my neighbor fed the moose some lettuce. So I saw the moose get fed some lettuce from my neighbor.
That's cool.
That is pretty cool because I can't ever say anything remotely cool. Like, I mean, I helped a baby squirrel one time. Like,
I
Get
just can't separate
rehabilitated.
John from this. Like I'm imagining like someone feeding John lettuce. You know?
Like a baby John.
why did you have to do that? Now it's gonna be forever. Oh, it's fine. Okay,
Yeah.
so this to me communicates a little bit of your heart, Justin, because you're coming from this vast wilderness, but it's almost like a wilderness oasis because there's so much beauty and fulfillment. Because oftentimes maybe you think of wilderness as like a wasteland of emptiness, right? But really, if you have the eyes to see it, it's filled with adventure, possibility, meaning, and beauty. And I feel like that, you know, communicates a lot of what you've brought to the table here already in just the last year or so. I mean, less than a year since we brought you to Louisville by the grace of God. But, you know, before we get into all of that, what was your faith journey like, you know, beyond obviously being in God's creation is beautiful, amazing, fulfilling. Minus the moose stories as an analogy of my life. Somehow that happened. What was your Catholic faith, Catholic identity growing up?
Right. Yeah, that's one of the most important questions you can ask a person, I feel like. So for me, like, I had a lot of you could say like the same story as a lot of people where my mom and dad brought me to church on Sunday. Um, and that was, that was really good. That was really important for me. But I would say like just throughout my time growing up and in high school, like there was a lot I knew, but I just didn't, I never let really like get into my heart in a big way. Um, but there was still, I can remember like in high school, like in middle school, there was never a part of me that wanted to be an atheist. Like I never had that feeling or desire. I always felt that like God being real is important. But I'll put it this way. I just didn't understand Jesus. Like I felt like I learned about him, and yet it was almost like there was this, he was like, Jesus was just in this other part of my mind. He never became like a front and center, like, oh my gosh, this is Jesus. Like we should be excited about him. But that didn't really happen to me like while I was in high school. So I think a good place to like start the story of like where I feel like my faith journey like really started. Like my mom brought me to youth group like when I was in high school, and that was again really good for me. And once I left high school and went off to college, I went to University of Idaho, far away from Alaska, but also far away from you guys. But when I went to Idaho, I really did have this thought when I first got there. I was like, all right, here I am. I'm in college. Well, when the first Sunday comes around, I should like try to go to mass on Sunday, and that would just be a good thing for me to do, right? So the first Sunday comes along, and I go and try to find out where the Catholic Church is. So I asked someone, and they're like, oh yeah, it's just like down the street this way. So I'm like, okay, great. So I started walking down the street that way, and I didn't find the church because I didn't walk very far. I just gave up. I was like, darn, I guess I can't go to mass on Sunday because I didn't find the church. And
So it's kind of intentionally not walking that far, is what you're
yeah,
saying?
sort of. I mean, I wouldn't have said at the time that was intentional, but
Right.
it kind of was. I just like gave up early. Well, and then I actually saw this sign for, it was called Resonate Church, and I was like, well, I don't know what this is, but I should at least try to go to church on Sunday. So I just walked on over again to Resonate, wherever this Resonate Church thing is, thinking like, yeah, this would be good. This gives you a good indication of like where I was at in the faith, just like that was, just how I was going. And so I go to Resonate Church, and, just by the name of it, you can guess what it was like. It, had the band, the worship band, and they played a lot of time, and, it was in like this college building hall. So, I mean, there were probably like, I want to say at least like 150 people there. I had never experienced anything like that before. I was like, oh, this is very interesting. And I actually met one of the lead musicians, and his name was Kyle. And he was a great Christian guy. He was a pretty good singer too. So part of what happened on my faith journey during this time was like, I think like the next Sunday, I did go to mass. I think I went at the latest one possible. But then the next few Sundays, I like either didn't get up in time or something, and then I just like didn't get. Then I was like, oh, I'll get to mass next week. And then sometimes I would go to Resonate Church. And along the process of this, Kyle like would invite me to go either hang out with him or hang out at a party or something, like with other people from Resonate Church. But there was one time where he got coffee with me, and he said like, all right, Justin, so I want to ask you like, what is the gospel? I'm like, I've never been asked that before. I was just like, well, there's the books, like those that they're called the gospels. And he's like, well, yes, there's those, but that's not really the gospel. And I was like, really? That's news to me. So, and Kyle, like, in that conversation, he was like, he stopped me, and he just really explained like that true story of Jesus Christ. And I would say like pretty faithfully shared with me like the actual gospel, like the kerygma, the heart of who Jesus is and what he did for us.
Yeah.
And it was the first I would say like the first time when someone like personally sat me down, like looked me in the eye and gave me that like real heart of who Jesus was and said like, and then gave me that invitation, said, do you want to know him? And I was like, oh yeah, I do. And
It
I'm
was
like,
personal.
yeah, it was very personal.
Yeah.
Which, that's something our Protestant brothers and sisters like do something very good in there.
That charisma, yeah, that proclamation of the gospel is we have a lot to learn from our Protestant brothers and sisters in that front. I think our pews would be much more full if we could just proclaim that. It's not, you don't need to get into a deep theological understanding, but just saying like Jesus loves you, he died for you, that sort of thing, and just the basic steps. Our culture now, especially, people have never heard it. Keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
No,
it's a great thing to say. Well, I would say from there, like it got me really thinking about Jesus in a bigger way. But at the same time, here's the thing: like I grew up Catholic, and I didn't know like a whole lot of things that I know now. But I knew like that growing up in the Catholic Church like meant something, and that there was like a truth there that I was still kind of like I wanted to be loyal to, even if I didn't really like know how to be. So, but here's the thing: amongst this, like, I'm also like experiencing college life for the first time, and I'm meeting other people who, to put it in a nice way, just don't have the same moral framework they want to live by as I did as a young Christian man. You hear guys talking in the hallway about the girls they did over the weekend or something like that, and just like, oh, that's different, or
Yes,
you
I
see
remember that from my days at Western Kentucky's baseball team, as I'm sure you both know very thoroughly. That was a fun time.
Yeah, so honestly, like, and I was like trying to make friends, and there was like a group of friends who happened to be on the same dorm floor and who I was connecting with, but again, a few of them didn't have the same moral standards that I did. And I would just say that like at the end of my freshman year of college, even with like I think I was kind of at this point where like I would once in a while, like maybe once every couple months, like find myself at the Catholic Church, because I was like, okay, I'll make it today at least this time. And other times I'm like going to Resonate Church, and then otherwise I'm just like just trying my best to do I was studying engineering at the time. That's important to this story, actually. I started off with studying engineering because I was like, well, I'm really smart and I'll probably make a lot of money, so that should be good enough for me to do this.
You were still growing in a little bit of humility too at the same time.
We'll circle back to that. Well, I just remember end of my freshman year of college. I remember being in a car with like some of my friends, and I had this moment of just feeling like pretty overwhelmed with this sense of like, you could call it fear. It wasn't exactly fear, but like, it was just like a lack of peace in like who I was and like what I was hoping for in my life. Like it just, whatever the opposite of peace is, that's what I was feeling. And it like just really hit me that and this thought I truly had, I was like, I know just something in my life has to change. And like, I can't go on like feeling like this. It probably has something to do with the faith that I grew up in. I just knew that like there was that draw to the Catholic Church. Like there's just something there that I think is important. I need to like go back to it. So after my freshman year of college, I go back up to Alaska for the summer. And I went to the Alaska Catholic Youth Conference, which was at the beginning of the summer, and they do that. I had actually been to it before several times, and it always sounded fun. But this time, like, I just went into it with like different mindset of like, I am searching for something here. Like I need to figure something out. I haven't thought about this memory for a long time, but I do remember at the very beginning of the conference, like telling one of the priests I knew a little bit that, I was off at college after my freshman year, and the priest was like, oh, then you're going to the Catholic Center all the time, I bet, right? And I was like, yeah. And in my head, like, I had no, like, I don't think I ever stepped foot in it. And that made me feel like, oh, maybe I should think about that.
Pricked your conscience a little
yeah,
bit.
definitely pricked my conscience a little bit. Well, and then I went to confession for the first time in a year on my own without my mom telling me to go, which is a big deal for me because at pretty much any time I went to confession before that, it was kind of like my mom brought me to church, like, all right, go to confession
Well,
now.
I'd say that's
you know?
most of us, right? It's very natural to have to be prompted, especially during those formative years.
Right. Yeah.
It's good. A lot of people don't even have that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yes, definitely looking back on that, I'm like super glad my mom, got me familiar with confession, so that it was a familiar thing that I was like, all right, I know what to do. I can go do this, right? Well, I went to confession, and like the main sin I confessed to the priest was not going to church on Sunday, and something he said to me that I'll never forget for the rest of my life, I'm certain, was he said, a pope once said, if people truly understood the power of the Eucharist, they would risk their lives to get to Mass on Sunday. And that hit me. Like, that struck me, and like it changed my thinking. Like, it was like a moment of grace to be like, you're right. Like, they would have died to like get to church on Sunday. What have I been missing? And so I felt like I went out and they were having adoration at the time, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like Jesus is here. What have I been missing? And I like that next week, I think I like went on Catholic Answers and read like all the articles I could find. I read like Rome Sweet Home by Dr. Scott Hahn. And like all of those just like really hit me. Oh, and I also read Rediscover Catholicism by
Matthew Kelly.
All of those all at once just like hit me and like really informed me of my faith. And then here's another really cool part of the story. So I had no plans for like a job to work that summer or anything. And I found myself at technically how this story works is that before ACYC, like right before, I had found myself at a pizza party with my old youth minister in Palmer and some other people who were there. There were these two women, Madeline and Lauren. I was like talking to them, and they were like, I mentioned how I didn't have a job over the summer. And they were like, oh, that's very interesting because we happen to be looking for a male counselor for this Catholic camp that we're starting. And you see these two women were about to start. They came up from Texas to run this program for a Catholic camp in the diocese. So they hadn't had this camp. Technically, there was a camp in the diocese before, but it was like decades earlier. So this is a completely new thing. And they were like, yeah, we need another male counselor. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not doing that. That's not happening, right?
Right.
So basically after ACYC, they gave my number to some other people, and the camp director basically hounded me and was like, just come to the camp and let me give you an interview and tell you about it. And I was like, all right, I'll come to the camp. I'll have an interview. We'll see what it's like. So I go to the camp. I meet the camp director, Rudy, who's an awesome guy. I'm like still friends with him to this day. And, I remember like him asking me like this question of like, we want to be like a Catholic camp. Like that's important. So like, what is it like what do you think like makes a Catholic camp like different from a normal summer camp? And, I'm answering this question with a lot of like passion of like, well, yeah, like I would want to be part of something where we like have the kids like understand like the beauty of the power of their faith and all these things. But as I'm saying this, I'm just like, man, this feels so strange to me because like I've just been living this out like really seriously for maybe like a few weeks at this point, right. Even though like, yes, I had grown up in it all my life, but this was like, felt like it was just a few weeks of like my heart truly being in it. But I was like, no, but I want to do this. And basically I ended up getting the job and being a camp counselor at St. Teresa's Catholic Camp in Alaska for that first summer. And I was there for 3 summers after that too.
Are they still running it?
Still there.
That's so cool.
Guys should check it out.
Catholic summer camps are like very close to my heart because there was one close to my college as well, Gasper River, and that's in Bowling Green.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still running and very, very successful. But it's that kind of experience because it gives kids who would maybe live in the city or other places an opportunity to experience the freedom of God's creation, right? Just as
Oh,
you
yeah.
grew up so naturally, so many don't have that. Especially in the Archdiocese of Louisville, like when we talk about a retreat, we talk about a 6-hour day of reflection at your church down the
Right.
street from your house.
It's true.
That's not a retreat. The camp director at Gasper said, to feel like you're actually going on a retreat, you have to like go far enough away, like at least 45-minute drive, so that you can't just justify, oh, I'll go home real quick and pick something up, or I'll leave if I want. There has to be some level of commitment. And if you're able to go for a day or two overnight, it gives you this deeper sense of openness, receptivity, and maybe just a distance from the previous world. And for you to work in that environment, you were basically providing other people an opportunity to do something that maybe they didn't encounter very often. Even in Alaska, there are cities, right? I mean, there are places where you could
there's one big city.
technically, right. But the Catholic element, I think, is the thing that's missing, because you could just go to summer camp and enjoy the nature and forget about all
Right.
of the depth as well to it. So
Exactly. Yeah. There's something about like, gosh, I remember like teaching all my kids like, all right, let's make sure we always genuflect before the little chapel we would go past. And the kids like took it seriously when they saw you as your like the cool camp counselor like doing. They're like, all right, and it was always great. Like every morning, like we'd go down our tire stairs past the chapel, and we'd all like genuflect real quick before the chapel, and then move on. And it was just like, wow, that's awesome to see. And one of like my favorite memories of this like little comment I made where I was trying to explain what prayer does in like as like spiritual warfare to a kid who's like, I don't know, let's say like he was 11 or something like that. And I knew I think this kid I mentioned that he plays video games sometimes. I was just like, okay, well, tell you what, imagine this. Imagine like when you pray, it's kind of like shooting a rocket launcher at Satan, all right? Like that's what prayer does to him, all right? Gets him out of there. And the kid is just like, wait, so you mean when I pray like 3 Hail Marys, it's like throwing 3 like huge grenades at the devil? And I'm like, yeah. He was like, whoa. And I was like, that's what this kid needed right there.
What a way to reach kids, though. I mean, to reach kids with the gospel in that way is
Especially the Call of Duty generation.
right, right.
Yep.
So unique. Oh my gosh.
I felt that in
Wow.
that moment because, like, yeah. I mean, I felt like I was just at that perfect age where that analogy just made sense to me. Like, maybe someone who's 50 might not have been able to be like,
What was that? Do you guys remember they wrote that article about the rosary not being a spiritual weapon or something, and then they had to revise it like 20 times because like they just kept getting called to task on it. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful, Justin. What you've shared, like, to me, is like the foundation of everything that I think God has called you to do in your life in different ways. Obviously, because you didn't stay there, right? You're not in Alaska anymore,
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
So what did you really get into in college, and how has that kind of informed what you're doing now?
Yeah.
For Family Renewal Project.
So we'll keep going with the story. So my sophomore year of college, when I came back to University of Idaho, like I immediately like started getting involved in the Catholic Center.
Here's a
put in
boring side note, but I'm
Sure.
just interested. How do you get from Alaska to Idaho? You're flying in every time you go back to school?
Yeah, I flew from Alaska to Seattle, and then Seattle to Idaho, and
Yeah,
then
that's
that was it.
crazy. Yeah, even the longest commutes to college, I think of my friends, that definitely tops all of
Oh,
them
yeah.
by far. Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
never-
insane.
Never could have imagined.
Yeah,
You had
I
two
might be the only
flights.
one of your friends who flew across an ocean to commute
Yeah.
to school.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the ocean
Yeah.
part. I was thinking
Yeah.
of Canada, because
Yeah.
technically you could have driven,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, that would have been like 70 hours, but I could have done it.
Not 17, 70.
70.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
a
that's
long
cool.
time.
All right, keep going. So sorry.
That's good.
Yeah. So sophomore year, I got a lot more involved with the Catholic Center and made some really awesome friends there. And the priest there was actually the vocation director. Ooh, okay. Yes, this is an important story to share. So, well, let's see how. At a certain point, it might have been, it was probably in November. The Franciscan Friars of the Renewal came,
Wow.
and yeah, it was pretty awesome. A couple of them came, but Father Emmanuel was one of them. That was pretty awesome. And they did a little retreat for us there, right? So the retreat was awesome. During this retreat, though, I'm in adoration. And this is like one of my, honestly, first times just experiencing like adoration in a very like mystical way. I felt like, I've seen this done at a couple other retreats since then, but like during adoration, one of the friars took up Jesus in the monstrance and like stood, and people were invited to like come and basically like kneel at his feet. So you're like right there with Jesus. So I do that, and then I go sit back down, and I'm just feeling like, wow, Jesus, like I feel like I just felt like, so in communion with him. And so I asked Jesus, like, all right, Jesus, like, here I am, like, honestly, Jesus, like, what do you want me to do? And I felt like it was one of the most like honest times of my life where I was like authentically asking that of Jesus and being willing to say yes to like whatever he was going to ask me. And when I asked that, I felt very quickly like the words like, be a priest. And here's the thing. When I heard that, I was just like, what? That wasn't me. I wouldn't think that. And I'll tell you this, like, I think there was a time during my freshman year of college, back when my semi-heathen days.
Right.
I remember, I can like specifically remember this moment where I was like walking back to my dorm, and I just thought to myself, like, some people become priests. That's crazy. Why would anyone do that? I would certainly never do that. And then that was my only thought, and then I like moved on with my life, right? So it was like a complete like rejection of that being like a holy call anyway. There's a reason I shared this story, and I'll keep circling back to it. So, but it was really from there that like, in my prayer. So as I said, I was studying engineering. Also during my sophomore year of college, I realized that I sucked at engineering, and I didn't want to keep doing it.
A lot of people change their degrees.
Yep. So, it was actually like through talking with my mom and my sister that they were like, Justin, like what about this? Like, you seem to like really be liking theology and like this idea of like thinking about the priesthood. Like, what if you went to St. John's University in Minnesota? My sister had gone there, so that was part of the reason why they were like, you could go here and you could study theology. And I was like, you know what, I could just do that, couldn't I? So I ended up applying, and I got accepted. And so yeah, at the end of my sophomore year, I transferred schools, went to this new place, which is huge milestone and decision in my life. And honestly, like, I think part of what gave me that courage was like, I think at this point I was honestly willing to be a priest if God wanted me to. And I kind of was, with that came more of a sense of like, I could do anything for God. Like, I really had that desire of like, Jesus, whatever you want me to do, I will do it. That's truly how I feel. So then I transfer, go to St. John's University in Minnesota. And when I first get there, to a couple of the first people I meet, the names were Dan and Matt, and they were both focused missionaries. So
there it is.
This is an important part of the story, right?
Everything's coming into focus.
Yes.
All right.
So when I first met Dan and Matt,
I have nothing to say to that.
Oh, John, don't act like you're any better.
it's so true.
Don't act like you're not cringe, John.
I will give you that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I remember when I was taking a walk with Dan and Matt and some other guys too, and it was a really great time making new friends. So, but I remember during this walk, as I'm asking Dan more about like what he does, and he's trying to be in the life of a focused missionary, and I thought to myself, man, it's what you guys do is really cool, but I could never do it myself. But I'm so glad you guys do it. I just had that thought, and that was that. Um,
You seem to have a lot of thoughts that don't go the way you think.
you are recognizing that, right?
Yes.
This is perhaps this is all part of like this big purification phase, and Jesus knew that. So, well, let's see what's important to this story. Okay, I can think of a couple of stories to share. So, that like Christmas season or the new when the new year came around, so like halfway through my junior year of college, I went to one of the focus conferences. It actually wasn't Seek. It was called SOS at the time, or Student Leadership Summit. It was I think it was in Dallas, Texas, and there was like yes, Dallas, Texas. There was like 3,000 people there, which is actually a lot smaller than what they have nowadays. Nowadays, the conferences are like 20,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I was at this conference and we focused on a recruitment session, and Father Mike Schmitz was there. I didn't go because it was a recruitment session. I went because Father Mike Schmitz was there. I was like, I want to go hear Father Mike Schmitz. So I go, and I still think this is crazy. Like, I still can't believe Focus like didn't pay Father Mike Schmitz to say this or something. But here's what happened. During that recruitment session, Father Mike gave a talk, and then he had a Q&A session, and someone asked Father Mike, like, Father, do you have any regrets in your life? And Father Mike Schmitz goes, no, I don't. But if I did, it would not be not having the opportunity to be a Focus missionary. That's like word for word what he said. Which,
Wow.
again, at a Focus recruitment session is just like, Father, did you actually just say that and they didn't pay you?
That's funny.
But honestly, like when he said it, it like hit my heart, because I was like, I respect this priest so much. Like if he wanted to have the opportunity to be a Focus missionary, like why shouldn't I want that? Like it really felt like, but now I would have to actually consider it. I didn't want to consider that. What the heck?
You were being stretched and prepared for ministry.
Ministry, yeah. So that was a funny twist right there. And then here's another funny twist. In a very how God does things, right? Okay. So at this point, I am still thinking about like, maybe God wants me to be a priest, and I would totally do it. I would be willing to go to seminary after college. That could be a cool thing. And so then January comes around, and then I'm like eating lunch with some friends at the school cafeteria, and this girl comes in. Her name's Amy. And I think she's pretty great. And we talk a bit then, and I see her around like that week. And I'm starting to get this crush on her, and I'm just like, what the heck is this? This isn't supposed to be happening. I was totally set on like, maybe not like totally set, but I was pretty sure if God wanted me to be a priest, like I said I would do it. I was already pretty sure of that. So what the heck is going on here? Well, in the midst of this, the important part of the story is that there was just at like some point I was like finishing writing up a paper, and I started listening to this really beautiful song by Danielle Rose, and it's called Abraham's Offering. Really good song if everyone wants to look it up. And it's about, as you can guess, the story of Abraham offering up Isaac. And there's just this part in the song where she like kind of like made up these lyrics, but like in terms of like speaking from God's perspective. Like when Abraham is about to offer up Isaac, God says like, do not slay your son, do not harm him the least. For now I know there's nothing you won't do. Now I know your love for me is true. And I had this like epiphany, like in this moment where I just like prayerfully looked at my life, and I realized it's like, wow, like, because when I heard, again, back to that retreat with Franciscans, when I heard, like, I felt like this voice saying to me, like, be my priest. I had to make a choice where I was like, am I going to be the kind of person who will give God everything or not? And I chose to be like, no, if God asked me to, I will be the person who gives God everything. I am willing. And I follow that path. Like, I made this huge decision to transfer schools and study theology, which was way different from what I would have expected to do. And I looked at my life and I realized just how, like, no matter what, like, yeah, like, I am willing to do what God calls me to do with my whole life. That's who I've become. Like, through that grace, that's who I have become.
So what you were
And-
saying is you were doubting, like, if I'm not becoming a priest, then I must not be giving God everything. And what you were realizing is that you had and were actively giving God everything, even if you weren't called to be a priest in that way, the way you expected.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, like, the way you expect it is very true because, like, I think at this point I was just learning the theology of how, like, like, in a very real way, like, a father and a husband and a father is like the priest of his family, and offers it up to God. And I'm like, so I was like learning about this and I can just come to this point where I was like, all right, like, I can take a deep breath. It's okay if I, like, don't go to seminary. Like, it's okay if I have a huge crush on this girl and, like, maybe want to, like, pursue something there. And it just, like, I felt very much like at peace and, like, kind of like seeing how God had, like, made things make sense for me, but had also, like I absolutely do believe, like, I did hear God's real voice and, like, giving me that real question of, like, would you be willing to be my priest? Would you be willing to give everything? And that formed me into the kind of man I became then. Um, you know, because people might be wondering, like, well, what happened with the girl? Like, well, we talked about it. Well, me and her had a little conversation in the chapel one time, shortly after that prayerful epiphany I had. And it was interesting because we both, like, knew we had feelings for each other, but she felt that it just wasn't right, like, in as far as, like, discernment goes. And I was like, okay. And so that's where I ended there too. But that's okay.
But God uses all these circumstances with different people to guide us
Exactly.
to his purposes. So it's all God's will.
Yeah. And then I'm still in my junior year and I'm still not even done with all the big stories yet. And then I went on a focus retreat called a Holy Spirit boot camp, and Father Mike Schmitz was there. Another priest who's super awesome, Father Brenda Rolling, he's a Benedictine priest, was there too. And the retreat was all about, like, just knowing the power of the Holy Spirit. And there was a lot of awesome things there that I could share, but I'm going to move on. So right after the retreat, Father Brendan Rolling came to St. John's University and talked to me and, like, 6 other guys who had been on this retreat. And he basically talked to us about the need for missionaries on the college campus. Here's what he says. He's like, all right, what we know is that, like, 80% of Catholics leave the church by the time they're, like, 24. So that basically means that, like, most Catholics are leaving the church while they're in college. And he said, like, well, here's the thing. If you knew someone who was dying, the first thing you would do is, like, check the heart. You make sure, like, they're not bleeding out from the heart or something. And right now the church is, like, bleeding out from the heart, like, on, like, the heart of the college campus. And that's where Catholics are, like, bleeding out. And he was like, that's why we need, like, you. We need you as, like, young men to go and, like, be missionaries there. And in that moment, like, I felt this real physical fire, like, in my heart, just, like, start burning. Like, this mission is, like, real. And, like, I, like, in that moment felt like I truly understood the disciples on the road to Emmaus when they said, were not our hearts burning within us when he came and, like, spoke the scriptures to us?
I was literally going to reference that if you didn't.
Yeah. Yep. I was already there. So what's also really cool about this story that I can say is that I have my best friend from college, his name's Seth, told me that during that same talk, he had an experience where he felt like he just could really sense his guardian angel, and his guardian angel being like, you need to listen to this. And basically, we both ended up becoming focused missionaries. And, like, that was, like, the thing that got us to, like, apply and
wow.
get accepted. Yeah.
Wow. So for 3 years, you did focused missionary work on a college campus. That is, becoming less and less unique, funnily enough, because they're churning out so many focus missionaries
Yeah.
nowadays.
I think there was around 1,000 missionaries like at the last summer training. So,
Just at one training.
just at one training.
Not how many focus missionaries have existed since they were founded, and when
Right.
when were they founded? Because that to me is fascinating as well. Do you know?
1998.
1998.
Yep.
So they saw it well in advance in many ways of what many of us have done, because this was 5-6 years before the internet really took off with social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Which I think has made it even more intense of a hemorrhaging of the faithful, right? Yet,
I did see a meme recently though that was like, how could you live in a world with the internet and not be Catholic? Like you could just look it up. It's true.
that is
That is
actually
so
true. Right.
Yeah.
I feel that so much.
That's
So
awesome.
And with all the other stuff that isn't so good on the internet, why wouldn't you want to be Catholic?
right. Yeah. Don't just say, oh, everything's terrible, so I want to be Catholic. But it's more like Catholicism is so awesome. Anything not that isn't just, it pales in comparison. I mean, there's something missing in your life, but only if you are formed well and you understand it all, right? A lot of people look at the faith as a cult, and it's not a cult. Really the word cult is at the very heart of culture, right? So culture itself can become cult-like. Like the cult in the negative sense people shy away from or reject or are suspicious of, they're suspicious of that religious leader who tells you to follow me blindly, and they don't really give you all the information even when you ask, and then they're leading you to do things to yourself that are not good, right?
Well, I see it this way too. Is in a cult setting, I think the problem is that the spirituality is founded on a lie. That's why that you don't get to know everything about it to begin with, because if you could see the whole picture, you could poke holes in it. And then two, also it's the ends that the leader, the group goes for are not for the best interest of the followers. And I think that's one of the things so sincere about the faith is like, it's like, hey, here's this moat, here's this life vest, here's this wall to protect you. Come on inside. And Christ is the same way. It's like, but you're free to venture out into the wolves at any time. Like we do have this safe place to protect you. If you do, follow the faith and receive the sacraments spiritually, but you can also wander into the spiritual wilderness and get eaten by wolves if you so will it.
You have freedom to do so.
Yeah,
right?
you have free will.
Right, and going to heaven is like being in the castle, and you intentionally pull the drawbridge up and throw away the key because you have no intention of ever leaving. On some level.
That's not what I was thinking, but yeah, that works too.
You go with it.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, Justin, you have a great wealth of experience in this sense of conversion, and I think we all do, right? We all have testimonies that are filled with intricate details and the timing of what people said at this moment and did in this way that pierced our hearts, right? But how have you ministered to others to also encounter that same experience? Because I think that's what God is doing, right? He's more interested in saving you than you saving other people. But in the very act of him saving you through conversion and healing and whatever kind of redemption you need, that starts to naturally spill over into the lives of other people, and you can't help that. So what does that look like as a focused missionary?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of my favorite ways to describe being a focused missionary is like, you kind of like this, you become a professional at like being good friends with other people and telling them about Jesus and through that friendship. Like that was honestly like how I described my whole job. Like I was called to like go and be real friends with these other people and let them know about Jesus, like through that.
I don't think any job I've ever worked has given me a skill set better than that. I can't imagine a job that trains you how to be good friends with other people. That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I could tell this really cool story. One of the first guys I met when I was in Bowling Green, Ohio, his name His name's David.
Which is where you were a focus missionary.
Which is where I was focus missionary. Yes. So at this point, I just graduated college, gone to focus summer training, which is super intense, and then I was sent to Bowling Green, Ohio. Funny story here. As a focus missionary, like, it's at the end of the first week of training that you get a letter saying where you're going to go. And no one knows where they're going to go. It's a big mystery, right? So I'm thinking like, man, I'm from Alaska. Maybe they'll like send me out west more, maybe somewhere to Washington or something. So I like open my card and I'm just like, all right. And it says like, congratulations, you're going to Bowling Green State University in Ohio. And my first thought was, where is Ohio?
Even when you're in Ohio too, your first thought is, where is Bowling Green State University?
Yeah. And like for summer training with focus, like I was in Florida at the time. So I was like, where the heck am I going? I thought Ohio was where Kansas was. I was wrong. And so
Did you think the same thing about Kentucky when you applied for this job?
no, I knew where Kentucky was.
Okay,
at
that's
this point.
good.
My geography was little better. So yeah, I go to Bowling Green, Ohio. And
I got to point out too, so in my college days, I grew up in Ohio, so a lot of people would apply to and go to Bowling Green, and everyone would always make fun of the Bowling Green people because they had like in the 80s or something, they had received the title of highest STD rate of any college campus in the US.
What?
But like the study A was old, and B, there was only 3 schools who did the study. So like it was like the highest STD rate out of 3 schools. However, no one ever looked into the facts of it, and would just
the headline.
they would always just be like, "You're going to the STD capital of there, Bowling Green," and would
Bowling Green.
just give our buddies a hard time for going there. So anyways, continue.
Yes, I have heard this story. Yes, so let's see. So I show up to Bowling Green and I get involved with the parish there as a focus missionary, and one of the first guys I met at like that first week there, after the first Sunday, we had a little parish picnic, and it was a fun party, and I met this guy David there, and I'm just like, you know what, David seems cool, we seem to connect, and he showed up to church on Sunday. That's pretty great. So I was like, I got his number because that's part of what it's really funny to say this, but like, they train you as a missionary. Like, hey, if you get to know a guy well, like, just get his number. Like, you gotta like see what happens. And it's funny because I feel like the freshmen coming in are like, don't expect someone to just be that friendly with you. Like you just met me and you like, but it was great though. And so I hang out with David a few times. We get lunch a few times, and well, in the course of doing this, like, I think I remember him hanging out in my apartment one time, and he was just sharing like his journey with the faith. Like, he grew up Catholic. Catholic, but this is very interesting. But like at maybe like later in high school, I think both his parents fell away from the faith and became Buddhist. But he didn't really want to fall away from the faith. But now that's just part of his story. So it's kind of like strange situation for him. And
He's like, "This is lame, Mom. Let's not do this."
Yeah, right. Yeah, but he has his own struggles with it. And so right during our lunches, like, he would like talk about his own like struggles with like, thoughts about like, this is a big question. Like, how can I really know like God is there? Like, what about the problem of evil, and just feeling like those doubts in himself. And back at the time, I was hearing this from him, and I'm like, "Oh, David, you know what? There are answers to those." And I tried to walk him through a few of those things, but I was like, "You know what, David? Like, I feel like I see in you though, like this genuine desire to like, you want to know Jesus, even though you don't quite know how to do that yet. And you know what? That's enough. How about, do you want to just like do this discipleship thing with me and like follow Jesus, and we'll just figure it out together?" And he was just like, yeah, we can do that. And, again, looking back at that, I'm just like, I feel like neither of us were in a place to like, that made a lot of sense, but the Holy Spirit worked through it, and that was great.
Yeah.
And, I should say, like, it was part of the reason I was there as a focus missionary, like, to make disciples. But with a guy who's actively saying, like, yeah, I'm just having these doubts. Like, maybe that's not when you first want to say, well, let's be a disciple of Jesus right now, right? but again, Holy Spirit works in mysterious ways, and I think for the right time, that was the right decision. And here's the thing, like, as he just, like, came to my Bible studies more and more, and we kept, like, having conversations together over the next 2 years, like, we definitely, like, became really good friends. And he just, like, got more involved with all the other, like, church ministries. We had deeper conversations. He kept having this, like, deeper conversion to the faith, like, through the retreats we would do, through our friendship together, and through just reading the scripture together and talking about Jesus, to the point where at the end of his college career, he was like, you know what, Justin, I really thought about it, and I've decided, like, I'm going to apply to seminary. So he applied to seminary, and he got in, and he's now, I actually just saw him in Cincinnati 4 days ago. I think he's in his I think he just finished his, like, 6th year.
Wow.
So he has his, like, master's now. So he's only a couple years away from, like, being a priest.
Athenaeum in Cincinnati, Mount St. Mary's?
Yes, Mount St. Mary's. Yep.
What's his name?
David Homeli.
Okay.
Yep.
I go to school up there. I'm finishing my MA program. So
Oh,
I'll
nice.
run into him. Yeah.
Well, I should say, so this year specifically, he's on his internship year. So he's still in Cincinnati, but he's working out at a parish.
Oh, okay. So I
but he'll be
probably
back
won't
at the...
But
Yeah.
what a beautiful witness to your impact in his life at that time,
Yeah.
and how the world's just intersected, even with Eric going to the very school. Like, that's kind of cool how that works.
That's cool. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, Justin, we're basically running out of time today, but obviously, you know, what you work with Family Renewal Project, you're teaching in the classroom with chastity, sexual integrity, healthy relationships, dating, things like that, with Vincent, and that's a job that I did for years as well, and it's all discipleship, but you also do courses and classes and things for, you know, different people, especially teens right now for Family Renewal Project. And so maybe touch on that briefly, and, you know, kind of share what you've gained just by being in Louisville just the last 6 or 8 months, and maybe we can bring you back on another episode here in a few months or so, whenever God wills it, or the Spirit calls us. You know, this is Spirit Inspire after all. But I figured we get a little, basically let this episode be an introduction to Justin Leiner. You know, since you're kind of on the FRP side of things, we could definitely bring you back on for the future. So, Justin,
Right. I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. So
that's a
you're
good thing to
coming.
know.
Yes. So with FRP, yeah, how I got here to Kentucky is like a pretty interesting story in and of itself, because for those who don't know, for a lot of people listening, will be a lot of people, I was in Ohio working as a campus minister these past 2 years. Like, once I finished my 3 years as a focus missionary, I went down to Texas for a year, then came back to Ohio to work as a campus minister, which was super awesome. But at the end of my second year of being a campus minister, just through different things happening in my life, like one of them actually involved a pretty hard breakup, but that basically got me thinking, just like, maybe I don't want to stay in Ohio anymore. Like,
Good move.
Good move. You know, I have to share. I have to share this one story. When I told my priest, Father Jeff, that I was resigning my position as campus minister, he just said, "Well, you know, Justin, like, I kind of always knew this wasn't always going to be the job for you." And I kind of felt that, like, you know, how was, like, your penance for this time of your life? And when he said that, I was just like, everything makes sense. Ohio was my penance.
Having grown up in Ohio, I feel the same way.
That's awesome.
Oh
my gosh.
There's great people in Ohio.
Ohio's everyone's penance.
Don't tell Brian that. No.
Yeah. So then, this feels so random, this story, but then I donated my kidney and was
That was definitely a weird thing to hear about in the job interview.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
Just, you know.
You're recovering from that. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I donated my kidney. I got to donate to a young Catholic woman named Sydney, which is super awesome. So it's important to the story because during this time, I'm just like finishing off my last month in Ohio, like recovering from my kidney donation. I'm just like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do.
I'm gonna start buzzing out laughing, so I just gotta put it out there. If for some reason the fact that Sydney and kidney rhymed, just like hit me super hard, and I'm like, I don't want to just hold this the rest of the interview.
Yes,
Come on.
Sydney has my kidney. So that's what it is.
It got too susical there for a second.
Yeah. So anyway, so I'm just sitting there like, I have no idea what I'm going to do next, and it was just kind of crazy to me. And my brother let me come live with him and his family in Tennessee, which was cool. And it was during that time that I was like, all right, time to go on Catholic Jobs Online and see what happens. And I saw the ad for Family Renewal Project on there. And well, what I really saw was like classroom presenter. And I was just like, well, that sounds interesting. So I look at it and I noticed the description that you guys are like, we are a company that's about like spreading the values of theology of the body. And we want to like do that like in the classroom and in other ways to help like restore the family and renew the culture.
That's awesome.
And I just read that and I was just like, that's what I've been saying. These guys get it. So I was like pretty excited, like, all right, like this would be a good place for me to start. And here's the thing, like one of my prayers when I was like thinking about like a new job was like, my two prayers were like, I'd love to have a job where like it's in Catholic ministry and like there's a really cool, good team dynamic again, where I'm like working with a team of people doing something. Also, I'd like something where I get the chance to do more like public speaking in some way, and something where I'll get to like be able to focus more on theology of the body as like the main thing in most of my ministry.
Right, because you're actually getting your certification through the Theology of the Body Institute, just as I've done.
Right, exactly.
And
so
you finished your 8th course, is that correct?
that is correct. Just a few weeks ago, I finished my 8th course.
So it requires 8 30-hour courses of master level content from different, professors or doctors up there in Pennsylvania, and you'll have your certification through the institute here when the next year and a half once you finish your practicum, which is a great gift to the Archdiocese of Louisville and anyone else you will encounter along the way. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like what got me interested in Family Renewal Project. It really did seem to me like the answer to a prayer. Like this could be like a really great place for me.
So
And-
first impressions, what's the classroom been like? What's the teaching, public speaking experience been like? And Vincent, you can
I
jump in a little
I want to
bit,
hear
too.
what he thinks of Kentucky too.
Or that too. What is Kentucky like compared to Alaska? Okay, I'm
or
afraid
Ohio.
Or Ohio.
On a scale of Ohio to Alaska, where is Kentucky from?
Yes, I will say for me, Kentucky, I like to think of Alaska as like it's its own thing. We don't need to do a comparison game because
That's
no one's
true.
gonna win. No, but Kentucky, like Ohio, was great people, but Kentucky is also great people, and there's just more stuff to do, and that's really nice. And there's also more terrain, and I'm not staring at cornfields for all of my days, so I really do appreciate that about here in Kentucky.
Have you seen the landmarks like Mammoth Cave and Red River Gorge or anything like that?
I have seen Red River Gorge.
Okay.
Cumberland Falls,
Cumberland
Mammoth
Falls,
Cave.
yeah.
Those are the
I think I've been to
two
a
big
Cumberland
ones.
Falls, but not Mammoth Cave yet. That's my next
You
place to
gotta
go.
do it. It's cool.
Yeah. So yes, Kentucky, very good. So with the Bright program, I would say like just from the beginning of the year, like I had to warm up to it a bit. Like when you're first in that classroom and you have no idea what to say, you're just like, holy crap, this is what I decided to do. Okay. But as I like warmed up to it and as I just like, just started doing my best and giving these presentations, I have definitely found that like I really enjoyed it. And honestly, like there are those moments where, teenagers think they're too cool for school and whatnot. But there are definitely times where like you'll be talking to them and you'll say some important point and they'll just look at you and you can just see that like they took it to heart. You're just like, yeah, I know you just got that there. I know you just like really understood that question. So I really have felt that like it's been a chance for me to like just share the things like I'm really passionate about, like in terms of just like helping these kids understand what it means to have a healthy relationship and to have sexual integrity and why that actually matters to them and to their own relationships. It makes me really happy, and I get like fired up about it. I mean, at this point now, like I could do the Bright program in my sleep.
Let's do it right now.
The
entire Bright program.
That's an extra 6 hours at least of content sometimes, so maybe not.
Yeah, but it was actually kind of recently a moment that definitely made me feel like, all right, like who I've become and my genuineness really is affecting these kids. Where I was at a public school, I think it was Bullitt Central, and after my first presentation, one of the kids in the class like came up to me afterwards, and he just very sincerely asked me like, why is it you're here? Like, why is it that you want to come in and share like this message specifically rather than any other message? First of all, I'm just really impressed that this kid in a public high school is like asking me this genuine question. So that made me really happy. That made me like, yes,
there is a lot of hope out there. You
Yeah.
just gotta go in the right places.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And yeah, it was a great moment for me too to reflect that, like, well, another fun fact about me is that I'm doing a master's in psychology through Divine Mercy University with a focus on marriage and family studies. So that's super awesome.
That's huge.
That program looks so cool that like just seeing it, I was like, should I discern that I'm called to do this? And I'm like, I'm not called to do this at all. But man, what an excellent program.
You can admire it from afar.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So something I told this kid was like, well, I really want like young people to be able to experience like the joy that comes from a virtuous relationship that's like grounded in purity of heart and chastity, because as John Paul II says, only the chaste man and the chaste woman can truly love one another. And it's that true love, not the fake love that the culture tells us that's like when you feel it, like that's love, that would be great. Like, no, you need more. You need something more than that. And I want these young people to have the understanding of the importance of sexual integrity and the importance of respecting the value of the other person and treating the other person as someone to love, not as someone to use, so that they can experience those marriages that bring that joy and wonder that the human heart was made for. And the younger they learn that, the better chances are that they'll actually be able to like get into that.
That's right. Vincent, do you agree with that as far as the classroom experience?
Yeah. I have plenty of commentary, but we would go way over to give it.
Right.
So maybe we do another one. Just
I think as we wrap up, I want to hear that JP2 quote one more time.
Oh, sure. Only the chaste man and the chaste woman can truly love one another.
That's awesome. And then, as Vincent Ricketts always says, chaste is based.
Say it, Vincent.
Yeah.
Chaste is based.
Yes, that's exactly right. So, Justin, we will definitely have you on for another episode. I think there's so much content to share,
awesome.
and the message of chastity is such a deep virtue to unpack that it will take many different opportunities to share that. So thank you so much for sharing your heart, to really get to know you a little bit more. I mean, I learned a little bit more about you than I even knew in all the months we worked together. So that's usually how that kind of thing goes. So praise God for you all, and guys, thank you for being here as always.
This was a lot of fun. This was a great episode.
Yeah, especially with our new addition to the studio, the Sacred Heart of Jesus. If you didn't catch that, we added that today, so it's a very great gift.
We needed an actual manly man here to bring it up, so Justin brought it up and helped us. Yeah. We waited until he was here,
Exactly.
because us scrubs couldn't bring it up. Yeah.
A gift of the cathedral, and because of the fact that the cathedral has a whole lot of different inventory for many years. There's a great wealth of history here, and so they've gifted us a lot to have this space as we've shared. This is our 3rd episode in the new space, so it's a great gift, and we look forward to many more episodes here on Spirit and Spire. So be sure to like and subscribe, and please pray for us, and we will pray for you. God bless.